let's get to the job of voicing up monitor wedges, which means putting this microphone. This is the microphone that's going to be used for centre vox. It's going to be here. At this point, it's really helpful if you know the height of the lead singer. If it's just one act on stage, obviously if it's a multi-band night or there's an MC between stuff, and just be aware that it's going to make a great deal of difference to, or potentially could make a big difference to the achievable gain before feedback and the tonal quality if this mic's going to change height on its stand during the night. We either have to make some good guesses, or great if we've done the research and we know that the artist is about my height. That helps. Okay, so it's really critical the distance and angles between the microphone and the monitor wedges. This is an SM58 beta. Now the beta is a hypercardioid, has a hypercardioid pickup pattern, different to the standard 58. The standard 58 has its best rejection immediately behind it. However, with a hypercardioid, there is a slightly narrower sensitivity to the front, but the trade-off is that with a beta, a hypercardioid, there is increased sensitivity just behind. There's a little lobe of sensitivity just behind, more so than a cardioid standard 58. That's critical. What it means with this particular hypercardioid microphone is that the best positioning for the monitor wedges is actually, let's pretend that's a monitor wedge, at an angle coming in to the back side of the capsule on either side. If this was a standard 58, a cardioid, not a hypercardioid, perhaps more of an angle for the microphone itself, so that its very back is pointing at the monitor wedges. Perhaps that would achieve a greater gain before feedback and a more natural sound. And on natural sound, the level you're playing at, being professional level, we are going much further than just achieving good gain before feedback. It should be very possible with a decent microphone, decent monitor wedges, which these are, well, they're not ideal for the purpose, although the Martinelli 1200s in the Venue SSR are very good, or in my opinion, you know, really sound monitor wedges. It should be absolutely possible to achieve 0 dBu at the preamp of the monitor desk, have your channel fader at 0, have your post fader, if that's how you're running it, auxiliary or mix end at 0. I'm saying basically have a unity gain stage, faders at 0, have a decent amount of SPL coming out of these monitor wedges, and have no feedback. That should be absolutely possible on a correctly set up system. So we go further than just gain before feedback. Incidentally, we possibly will have to touch a graphic equalizer to be able to achieve that with some selective cuts. But we should be going further than just achieving good gain before feedback. We need to be achieving good sonic quality. You know, it's such an irony that for the person who's effectively paying you, the person, or the people, the band, that the event is happening because of, ultimately it all comes back to the act on stage. And it seems ironic sometimes that all they hear from the front of house PA is, well, pretty much the bad stuff. You know, they're getting the not very intelligible bits of the front of house PA. So it seems ironic to not, if we didn't spend much time making the monitor mix for the artists sound just so, it would be a great irony, because without the artist, the event just wouldn't exist. So getting a nice, smooth, natural sound on stage for each individual artist is absolutely what it should be about. So we need to be very careful not to attenuate too much. So getting the positioning optimized first is the right place to start. Achieving the best gain before feedback, to me, is about three things in sort of order of importance. Relative distance between the sound source and the input transducer. Can you get the artist to be really close to the microphone? You're a little bit limited in what you can do with that. Punk and rock and roll is going to be lollipopping the thing anyway, so that's great. But a jazz singer may be some sort of soul performance, maybe a little bit more back-off-ish. But that's certainly one way we can vastly improve the gain before feedback and the quality of what can happen with this monitor wedge system. It's of course a massive difference between 3 fingers away from a 50, or even 2 fingers away from a 58, compared to 4. By 4 fingers distance away from an SM58 beta, you've lost a considerable amount of the low end, and 6 inches away from an SM58 beta, you're pretty much wasting your time. So getting the sound source real close to the capsule, point number 1. Point number 2, something you can definitely do something about, is the relative distances and angles between the input transducer and the output transducer. We sort of discussed that. Actually, a couple of extra things on that. The said to be optimal kind of angle between, or for when using an SM58 beta, is to have the monitor wedge pair 120 degrees as an angle. Or an easy way of looking at it is just look at the mic stand on the floor and make it parallel with the peg. If you put the front peg forward, as in this particular case. And then my third thing about improving gain before feedback, and there may be other things, but off the top of my head, my third thing, and in order of priority, by the way, get the distance right if possible, get the angles and distances right, and then if that, I may sneeze. If you've still not got the gain before feedback that you need, then have a look at the graphic. A couple of extra things to point out while I'm here. Are we happy with the cable management situation? I'm fairly happy, although I think that needs to be tucked in a little bit more so here. For live, although it looks neat, try and avoid the old rappy roundy standy, because fair chance lead vox might want to get interactive with the crowd or other members of the musicians. So try and avoid doing that. If there's a little place you can rest it, just to tuck it in a bit, fine. Incidentally, if you can, I don't know how well you can hear that HF kind of buzzing. A lower price point monitor wedge, basically. That's what you get potentially. Lower price point, possibly lower or greater noise. And we might have to work a little harder to make these particular monitor wedges sound natural for the artist. But it's very much doable. Final thing is just I've gone with the, I don't know how well you can see that, the figure 8 cable management system there. This is usually quite good for being able to pull the mic off the stand and set off without too many problems with the cable getting stuck on its little pile. If you just circle a little pile, that can get twisted and caught. Figure 8 seems to work better. And when you make your figure of 8, start with, again, hopefully you can see this. If we go from the top, start making your first loop at the end that is coming from the stage box, so that your last turns are on the part of the cable that is going to the microphone, i.e. the piece of cable at the top of the pile is the piece of cable that goes straight to the microphone. Or your cable will get stuck in a horrible pile, and visions of the whole mic stand falling over and musicians falling over it and it all going to pot. Anyway, we can voice up the centre pair. So, excuse me, I have established on my preamp on the front of house desk that is also doing monitors today, a good working input level for the analog to digital gain, head amp gain, whatever you want to call it. I've done that. I did that when I was down there, when I was voicing up front of house, which I've not filmed, just to kind of keep this this little step-by-step thing moving forward at good pace. So basically 0 dBu, yeah, average for input signal for this microphone. Because I've done that, and because I've also sent pink to these wedges, I've got a good idea of system level. When I unmute that means there's control straight away. I know the levels that I'm working with here, and it's not going to be anything too crazy. And it's really great when you can be in a position with your systems that you know that 0 dBu on your preamp and faders at 0 gives you good, sensible starting point levels in your monitor wedges. So what's the job now? If we've got our distances and angles between input transducer and output transducer as good as possible, what's the job? Well, voicing up. So what's voicing up? It's putting your voice through the monitor wedges. Your voice will differ from the artist's voice, of course. But these are things that we want to be doing before the musicians arrive, so that when you're effectively, it's your boss, isn't it? You know, it's the guy who's paying your wage, usually the lead vocalist, or effectively the band as a whole, right? But it doesn't matter anyway. Whoever steps up to this microphone is your client, and you can make them feel confident about themselves straight away. If they go up to the centre Vox mic and they hear their voice nice and naturally through the mic, you're off to a fantastic start. Try not to find yourself in situations where the first time a voice is passing through this monitoring system, it's the artist. That is not a good situation to find yourself in, because there is work to be done usually with monitor wedges, and make sure you're doing the work and making them sound as natural as possible before people arrive. I think I've laboured on that point. Get there early. Sorry, just one more thing as well I should point out. Usually, if you buy a decent price point to dedicated monitor wedges, not like what we've got here, admittedly, we've just got actively amplified loudspeakers, they come in pairs. Observe that the low frequency component is close together, i.e. next to each other, and the HF components, like the horn, is right and then left, i.e. in what would be described as matched pair if you're buying dedicated monitor wedges. These active early amplified loudspeaker boxes don't come in matched pairs, but it is possible by using, hopefully you can see that, a little SM58 box to kind of compensate for the fact that these active loudspeakers are actually only wedge shaped on one side. So what I'm saying is just be aware that what you're looking for is LF drivers next to each other and HF drivers left and then right if you're going to do especially if you're going to do a stereo mix for your lead vocalist with slightly different programming one side to the other. By having the LF drivers close together, you will get less phase incoherency going on. LF drivers further apart, more LF variation, low frequency variation, as the lead vocalist moves around a little bit. Okay, voicing up. So job number one really is ask yourself the question, how's it sound? Does it sound fairly natural to start off with? And also, what approximately is that SPL like? Is that going to be enough coming back from the monitors to fill in the intelligibility that is lost behind the front of house PA? Very quickly after having that first listen in the monitor wedges, get the front of house PA on, even if it's just briefly, to get some relativity. We are only filling in for what is missing from the front of house PA when you're behind the front of house PA. So it's important to do this process in conjunction with the front of house PA system on. After that, when we actually go to the finer tuning of voicing up monitor wedges, then maybe mute the front of house PA for a bit so you can concentrate on the sound, sonics of the wedges themselves. But keep thinking back to the whole point of the exercise, which is filling in behind the main PA. Anyway, just in terms of sound in general and the initial observations, here it is. First of all, it's not got a high-pass filter on. Because I'm using a dedicated, because I'm using a front-of-house desk that is also going to be where I mix my monitors, and I have got effectively separate inputs for my input channels for my monitors, I can do the wonderful thing where I have a different high-pass filter on my monitor wedge input for this microphone than the front of house. And I mean, 90 hertz is a minimum for a high-pass filter on a centre Vox mic, in my opinion. I think you can go further than that sometimes. The loudspeaker will reproduce the thumps of the acoustic to electronic conversion process, but that stuff doesn't normally happen in my voice acoustically. It's possible to create sub-frequencies with your voice through a microphone and a loudspeaker system, but really, fundamental frequency of a male voice, it's defo not extending down below 100 hertz. So high pass filtering, job number one.